Hello and welcome to the latest of my deep dive videos, this one into the Scorpio super new moon, which occurs on November the 4th at 9:14 p.m. Universal Central Time. Now, as ever, I'm going to give you the overall meaning of what a Scorpio new moon represents and the opportunities it gives us. I'm then going to share on screen the event chart, and from that we can see how other planetary influences are going to inform our prospects over the next month, which is what the influence of this new moon holds. I'm then going to go on to outline each of the 12 zodiac signs in terms of the sun or the ascendant, you can choose, to give you a flavour of what you can expect over this following month. So please stay with me for that. Now, if you are new to me, I would be honoured if you would subscribe. Please click or tap on the bell notification symbol. And also, if you'd like to get your free daily written horoscope fired to your device each morning, I've been writing them for over 25 years, please see the subscription link beneath this video. And with year 2022 roaring up towards us, if you want to order your personal forecast for next year, if you order it now, I'll give you the rest of this year free, plus a character analysis, plus 30% off. Gain searing insights to the opportunities, but some of the challenges that lay ahead, and this extra information can help you to plot your course forwards. Please see the link below. So what is a Scorpio new moon, and what does the supermoon mean for this Scorpio new moon? Well, I don't actually believe it will make any difference that it is a supermoon. Therefore, the moon's that much closer to us on Earth as we view it. What it will do is perhaps give us a greater sense of its presence. And of course, the moon is at the very heart of all our lives. It affects tides. It's obviously very influential in terms of the cycle of life. And this particular new moon, of course, in Scorpio, is the 8th zodiac sign. The sign of Scorpio is ruled traditionally by Mars, and the modern ruler is the transformational energies of Pluto. So the 8th zodiac sign is fixed, and it's also a water sign. And traditionally, it represents intensity, introspection, diving deep, understanding the mysteries of life. So if you're someone with a passion for watching crime TV series or forensic investigation programs, just in that way, this is a new moon that can boost that interest. Or if your interest lies more in esoteric subjects like astrology, that can be where you're putting your attention. But it is a chance to review and, if you like, refresh our review. So the sign of Libra was very much about interaction, relating, connecting to others. The sign of Scorpio can be about ends, but it can also be about beginnings. So it's very much like the death card in a way of tarot, which often gets a bit of a bad press, but it just means the potential for change. Now, we can embrace this potential to dive deep, be more analytical, try and understand things from a more emotional perspective, or we can use this new moon in a more practical, prosaic way to think about our longer term resources, because the 8th house in Scorpio does represent banking, insurance, pensions, investments, savings, property. It can also be to do with legacies and inheritances. And also, it's where we're joined together with another person. Now, that could be in a business partnership. It could be a long-term loyalty we have to a particular financial institution. So all of this can come up for review. And of course, a new moon is an opportunity to set our intentions. So we may want, from the analysis that we all go through, to improve our lot, whether it is around our financial security, whether it is around our sense of intimacy, whether it is about where we're most invested and devoted in terms of emotional relationships. So there's lots of different strands that we can embrace from this particular new moon. Now on the screen now, I'm sharing the wheel for this event. And you can see on the other side of the heavens is the rather erratic energies of Uranus. And it's very exact on this particular new moon. So Uranus is in the sign of Taurus, and that's why I feel the resources of the planet, the natural resources of the planet, are being challenged. And Uranus is the planet of innovation, and that's why we're being asked to look at things like solar power, electric cars, to update our approach to consumption, which is what the sign of Taurus is very much about. And Uranus, of course, rules electricity in a way. So that's why there's a lot of talk, I feel, about power and the supply of power at the moment, because we're trying to make this transition away from natural resources to being more enlightened. And of course, it's not necessarily a completely easy passage, because, and that's where the transition of the sign of Scorpio comes in, because maybe those newer ways of doing things at the moment can be more expensive. Not always, but can be. And some people can push back and just want things to stay as they were. But of course, Uranus is not just the planet of restlessness, it is the planet of revolution. And it also is very erratic, but both these signs are fixed. So if we think about it, fixed energy likes a degree of continuity, whereas Uranus likes to push us to try new things. Now, the ironic thing about this particular new moon is that Uranus is exalted in the sign of Scorpio, but is in its full in the sign of Taurus. So it's not its best location. So Uranus understands the need for change, and so does Scorpio, just in slightly different ways. But that's where the Plutonian energy comes in, isn't it? You know, that's about being open and conscious, to mining deep within ourselves to see how we can transform ourselves. So I think if we are thinking about the way we're connected to others, there is the potential for some disruption, because Uranus pushes us to make changes, but both these signs resist change, and that can create tension. So this is not going to be a new moon without its challenges. And also you can see on the screen that Saturn, which of course has been clashing with Uranus for much of 2021, it's still within 5 degrees of the square with Uranus. So we do have a T-square. It's just a bit broader, but we have a T-square between the moon position, the position of Uranus, and the position of Saturn. And Saturn, of course, can be about limitation, it can be about resistance. And because it's in the sign of Aquarius, and based on this chart, which has an ascendant of 28 degrees in Cancer, it means that it's in the 7th house. So the 7th house represents our relationships. So I think we can find ourselves feeling a bit tense about the distribution of monies in our situation. COVID has had such a massive impact. There has been cost rises. There's perhaps also the implications of Brexit, whether you believe in that or not, if you're watching this from the United Kingdom. So we do have quite a lot of headwinds on this particular new moon. It's not necessarily going to be so easy to set our intentions to improve our lot around intimacy, around long-term finances, around where we're devoted. In fact, it may be that we need to make some changes. And of course, that's what new moons can be about, pushing us to think about things in a fresh way. Now, there are some lovely things going on with this event chart. Mercury and Venus are in a lovely sextile. We also have Venus and Jupiter, one of the luckiest of all planetary influences. They're also broadly in sextile too. They're known as the greater and lesser benefics, and they're angling up very splendidly as well. Now, in terms of this particular chart, Venus is in the 6th house of being productive and taking care of the details, and Jupiter, ironically, is in the 8th house which of course is very Scorpionic. So there is the opportunity to transform our prospects, but I think what Uranus is saying is that we have to be open-minded, we have to be prepared to give up some things, but embrace new ways of doing things. So the more flexible we can be, the more we can gain over the next month. Now, if you would kindly stay with me, I will share with you each of the 12 zodiac sign forecasts. Hello Aries. Well, the Scorpio new moon has something very much in common with your sign, because you're both traditionally ruled by Mars. Now, of course, Scorpio now has two rulers, so co-regents in the guise of Mars and Pluto, whereas you still just have Mars. So Mars is the dignity planet for you. So it does give you a kind of a flavour, because Mars is very much about action, and certainly in the sign of Scorpio, it's very much about desire. Now, your rulership of Mars, I think, is more to do with action in a more impulsive way. The Scorpio energy can be much more analytical. It's thinking before it takes action. But with Uranus in your second house and Saturn up there in your 11th house of idealism, this is not a month to be idealistic about your resources. So if you're thinking of starting a new way of doing things, you have to take into account the harsh realities of the environment that you're trying to achieve your goals within. So you can try something different, but you need the support and cooperation of others, I feel. Now, in terms of the romantic dimension, it's possible that if you and a partner don't share the same long-term vision, which would come through Saturn's influence, then this could put a big inhibition on the tie. Maybe one of you wants more space to do their own thing, wants to be freer around expenditure, whereas another one may be more cautious and thinking more about that long-term future. So if you're not really allied to someone, you're not really going in the same direction in quite the unified way you were, it may be time to have some very frank discussions. And what Uranus can do is push you to look at some painful truths, because Uranus is the planet of truth. However, if you're single, the magnetic energy that's part of all our existences is amplified hugely by this event, and you could dazzle someone. And of course, Mercury is in your 7th house of relating. It's come out of shadow on the 2nd of November, and it's forging that delicious link with Venus, which could see you, Venus in your sister fire sign of Sagittarius, chatting to someone who's a little different. It could be a friend, can become much more. So this potentially, if you're a single Aries, could be quite an exciting new moon. But also, whatever your status, this is a time to think on your feet when it comes to marshalling resources. Now, Taurus, of course, Uranus is in your sign, started the process in mid-May 2018 to mid-November 2018, went back into Aries, back into your sign March the 7th, 2019, been there ever since. Whatever your personal circumstances, if you have the sun stacked up right at the front of the sign of Taurus, some kind of change is almost inevitably occurred in your life. But change doesn't come easily for you. What pushed that change even more was the combination of energy in Capricorn 2 years ago, which, even though you can be resistant to trying different things, that really gave you an appetite to be much more pioneering in your approach. But perhaps one stage of that change has taken place, but now you're thinking about where you've got to. And I think Uranus in your sign is certainly pointing more towards a need for independence. So even if you're in a very committed relationship, following your interests and hobbies is vitally important over the next month. Even if you really love being with your partner, it's good to have some fresh air around you in terms of what you both do. Now, Saturn, of course, for you, in that T-square, is in your sector of success and goals. So if you're trying to work together with someone in a partnership situation to do with work, it will be very important to make sure that the terms of reference between you are absolutely crystal clear. Otherwise, a problem could ensue. And even if you're a Taurus that will do everything you can to resist any kind of alterations. I think whether it is at work, whether it is around relationships in general, or one big personal one, being open to that concept of flexing, not necessarily being rigid in your response to any challenges or opportunities that come your way, because if you are, it will create literally headaches and frustration and see you feeling overwhelmed. So just try to accept that it's okay to go with the flow. It can be very, very healing and actually turn out to be very productive too. Which brings us to Gemini. Well, this particular new moon for you occurs in your sector of health, work, life organization, fitness, diet, anything to do with trying to iron out the crinkles that we all have, most of us have. Some people can live an entirely seemingly obvious, meticulously gleamy, well-ordered existence. But actually, if you drill down, perhaps they use too many cleaners. And, you know, personally for me, that kind of level of perfection is not always a good thing, because every time we get in the shower, we just clean with a heavy detergent, that stuff potentially going up into our feet. So, and then that person may apparently have this very pristine world, but in some way have some rigidity about it, or find it difficult to let go a little bit and just live in the moment, overanalyze things, stuff like that. So that's all very sixth house energy. So we have to accept that the new moon is in your sixth house, and there is an opportunity to improve the functionality of your world. But what Uranus is saying is you need to take your emotions and your psyche with any physical changes that you make, because if you don't, the nerves and the stress, which I think have been more prevalent for Gemini people this year, can still be a factor. Now, with a gorgeous link between your ruler Mercury and Venus in your sector of relationships, and also Jupiter, if you are someone who wants to get a message out there, and you have ideas to share, and they may be ideas that are actually quite deep, knowledge that you have that others don't, whether it is in a more spiritual dimension, whether it's in a metaphysical dimension, whether it's to do with some kind of lifestyle approach. If you have things you want to say, as long as you're very ordered and you think through how you're going to deliver that information, that's what Saturn's asking you to do, then I think that this can be a really helpful new moon. But if you're someone who is struggling a little bit to integrate the emotional and the spiritual side with the more practical and physical side of your situation, there may be more work to do, and that's what this new moon is asking you to do. Now, Cancer, what Uranus has been doing for you since it entered this sign is making you think very much about your future in perhaps a very broad way. Perhaps things that in the past you wouldn't have embraced, like astrology, may have become much more captivating for you. The 11th house energy is about groups, but it's also about speaking out about social injustices. Those things may have seen you be much more active over the last few years, but the position of the new moon and its conjunction obviously with the sun is in your sector of joy, self-expression, romance, and therefore Uranus's energy in the 11th house is much more to do with the group. So the 5th house is much more to do with you, the individual, expressing and receiving the joys that you want. So balancing what's good for you against what's good for the group may be something you need to do over the next 4 weeks. But overwhelmingly, this new moon is saying to you to go for it, to showcase what makes you special. And if you're trying some things that are particularly different, then I think this could be a very helpful phase for you. How does Saturn feed into this in the T-square? Well, it's just that Saturn's in your 8th house of finance. So if finance is an inhibition in terms of your long-term plan, or sharing your ideas, or sharing your artistry, creativity, talents, even making your love life go in a more dynamic direction, it is going to potentially be a little bit of a gotcha. So all you can do is work with what you've got. But I think Uranus is saying that if you're feeling stifled in terms of expressing joy, this is the time to be more daring, and don't just stick with what you know. Often your caution is admirable because it comes from wisdom, and it's also obviously there to protect you. But sometimes that can pulverize your passion. So it's important for us all, to have the courage of our convictions, and when the moment feels right, to really share with people just how talented or how warm and how caring we can be. So that's the wonderful platform you have over the next 4 weeks. But it may mean that there could be a little bit of financial considerations around it, and you may need to be a bit braver. I'm not saying you're not brave, but a bit braver than where you've been. So we can all only be brave within our own level of braveness. There's not an overall braveometer. So if you feel that you've been going safety first for a very long time, this new moon is saying just edge up that beach, out of that water, let the sun shine down on you, and enjoy basking in the limelight. Now, Leo, the position of the Scorpionic new moon is in the part of your horoscope to do with home and family and emotions, the sense of protectiveness and security that we all need. And that could be something that you're working on over the next month. So for some Scorpios, it could be thinking very much about planning for Christmas, but it could be to do with some property considerations. But Saturn's in that sector of relating, forging that tough T-square. And you've had a kind of itchy feet situation all year, I feel, in terms of how you work or the type of connection you have to the wider world. But there may have been something around a personal or home relationship which has been inhibiting your ability to go out and do as you wish. But I think at the moment, yes, you do need to look after your sense of security, but I do feel that there can be some sudden demands upon you over the next 4 weeks that come from a more professional consideration. Now, Virgo, for you, this particular new moon occurs in your third house. The third house very much to do with how we think. It's talk and thought, very Gemini, quick-witted and restless. But you also have Mars in this location, which can be quite blunt. When it comes to your relationships with neighbours and siblings, this could be a chance for some kind of improvement or transformation. But Saturn's in the part of your horoscope to do with the details of life, and also to do with your vitality. And I wouldn't push too hard over the next month in terms of your interactions, because a lot of electrical energy around this because of Uranus, but the resistance that comes from Saturn, but the impatience that comes from Mars. So if you go into a situation without thinking about what the unintended consequences are, so if you start something new or you start a dialogue with someone, there's some kind of theme developing in your situation that you're enthusiastic about, just think about where that could take you away from some other things. So a little bit of intensity around communication, I'd say, over the next 4 weeks, but there could be a chance to connect with some new people. And if you are wanting to change some elements of your life, one of the things you may consider at the moment is actually doing some more short impact, more explosive fitness work because of the role of Mars in its home zone of Scorpio. And if you feel you have, not got the level of exercise that you've wanted because of COVID rules and restrictions, and now, of course, with Saturn in your 6th house of health, you may feel that you do want to get a little bit more active. But I just wouldn't overdo it. Your nervous energy can be quite high at the moment, so important to get lots of sleep, great nutrition, and enjoy those social encounters that this new moon can throw up. Now that brings us to Libra. Now in this particular event, the planet Venus, which is your ruler, is alongside Juno. My joke on that, about Juno, sorry. Of course, it's alongside Juno, and they're both in Sagittarius, which is very free-spirited. For you, that's everyday conversations, forging a wonderful link to Jupiter in your sector of romance. So, hey, lovely. And the new moon's in your sector of consumption, but also desire, whether it's good food, good wine, or getting together with someone that you fancy. This is a very sort of lovely new moon for you. It brings you out of that period where it was a lot about trying to assert your individual needs. And also, if you work very, very hard during all the transits that went through your sign, you can now reap the benefits. So I'm hoping for you and me, of course, with my speaker fixed star influence new ascendant, at 23 degrees, that will lead to some kind of improvement in terms of that sense of security, the foundations in world. So where does Uranus and Saturn fit into this? Well, I wouldn't be too quick to splash money around. And obviously Uranus in the 8th house could, see a big ticket item come into view and think, with Mars in the 2nd house, be quite impulsive. But Saturn's just saying, only buy something if it's got a real practical value, which sounds so darn boring, doesn't it? So we'll have to give ourselves some treats here. So, if you feel that you can balance the books and do something for you, that would really please you, something you've wanted for some time, whether it's that lovely handbag or that new suit or that rather swish night on the town, or go to a Michelin star restaurant, whatever it is that's got a bit of luxe attached to it, give yourself permission to do a bit of it, but you probably need to make it a little bit proportionate. Sorry to be such a serious Capricornian influenced Libran ascendant person. Which brings us to Scorpio. So obviously for you, a great opportunity to build up your individual approach to situations. But having Mars in your sign is such an asset on this new moon. But because you're fixed nature, what happens in your life is you're constant, massive change, constant. And those constants can go on for a long time. And then when massive change comes, it can be really massive. So of course, with Uranus in your 7th house and Saturn in your 4th house of emotion, Uranus in your 7th house of relating, if there is an emotional relationship which is not feeding you in the way you've wanted, whether it's around a family relationship or a more romantic one, you could have itchy feet. And of course, Mercury's still just tucked into, it's going to be moving into your sign in a couple of days on the 6th, but it's just tucked into the 12th house still. So stuff that you've been thinking deeply about as Mercury's gone through that long period of retrograde and shadow in your 12th house, that more introspective stage you've gone through is still hanging around a bit on this event. But I think generally this does give you the chance to go forwards more dynamically. I think money and loot can come to you on the back of this event because of the glorious link between Venus and Jupiter. Venus in your 2nd house could be linked to a property matter. But I just thought, if you're unhappy in a relationship, I think something's got to be done about it in the next month. If you're single, somebody can come into your world who you really do have quite a connection with. And especially if you feel you can really be yourself, because of course, although you can be quite direct about expressing your opinion about others to others, when it comes to saying how you feel about things, you can be very, very sort of shy would be a strong word. It may be true for some Scorpios, but certainly protected would be true. And perhaps this new moon and the influence of Uranus is pushing you to be a bit more daring, but then Saturn comes along and says, no, nail it all down, don't take too many risks. So there's a few things to sort of like try to balance up. But if you give yourself a brand new hairdo, buy some clothes, glam yourself up a little bit, the energy of the new moon can give you a new boost or extra propulsion on ongoing strands that are working. Or if you want to start something from scratch, this can be a very important 4 weeks for you. Which brings us to Sagittarius. Now, of course, this event occurs in your 12th house. Uranus is in your 6th house of practicalities. The 12th house is about reflections, endings, can be sorrows. It may be to do with secret enemies, but you do have that glorious conjunction between Venus and Juno in your sign, and Jupiter, your ruler, is linking into them, and also they're both positions are linking into Mercury in your sector of friendship. So I think what this is saying is that maybe what you're wanting, it's not so much that you're going to be betrayed by anyone. What you're wanting is extra evidence that the people that are really at the centre of your life are truly and utterly committed to you. And it's not that you're necessarily going to sort of like, be putting them on a medieval torture contraption in order to extract a confession of commitment. But it's more, you just want to see that people mean it. I don't necessarily see with this chart so much that you're going to find out so much about people who are going to betray you, which could be possible. But what I would say is that at work, just be conscious there may be the need to continue to upgrade your approach, to embrace innovation and realize that Uranus is going to insist on changes, whether you or I like it, it's gonna come. So, often you're the person who sees the trends emerging, but I think at the moment you could find yourself a little bit more, clearing out some old stuff, thinking about things that have hurt you in the past. Past angers can come up, particularly of an emotional variety going back some years. Past injustices, they could come to the fore. But because of the position of Saturn, if you do need to discuss anything that's delicate, do choose your words carefully. Otherwise it's just totally counterproductive if you get very frustrated, because you can lose control of the discussion so easily in that way. Which brings us to Capricorn. So this new moon is in your sector of the future, of friendships, of higher principles, of connectivity to the wider world. So in view of the fact that Mars, the planet that rules Scorpio, is going to be in this sector through to the second week of December, I think you're in for a really merry time between now and Christmas. And of course, we're just on the cusp. Tomorrow, Venus is going to go into your sign, where it will be, whence it will be. I like the word whence. I've taken to whence recently. Whence it will be through to the 6th of March. So a really extended transit, and that can draw a lot of goodness to you. It's all because of a retrograde that begins on the 19th of December. And remember, for the whole of December and for some of next year, Venus is very closely allied to Pluto, the planet of transformation. So if you're single, I think the chances of your love situation being revolutionized in some way, particularly with Uranus in your 5th house of romance, could come through a connection with someone in a group, a social event that you go to could be very uplifting. There could be an electric connection with someone. Uranus, very electric. But Saturn is your ruler in the 2nd house. So you do have Venus and Juno forging that gorgeous link with Jupiter also in the 2nd house. So past hard work can pay off for you over the next month. And it may be that people are going to reward or recognise you in quite discreet ways, but ways that will really please you. Like an email or a text message, or just a very sincere thank you. Or it could be a gift. It could be even something bigger financially can come back to you. But Saturn's still suggesting, even though it's now gone forwards, that you're going to have to keep working in order to get rewards. So because it's in the T-square with the 5th and the 11th houses, you cannot, sorry, that's a very poor John McEnroe impersonation. You cannot be too idealistic about finance. And it would be most unlike you to be so. But if you find yourself wanting to be very idealistic, which is very lovely and very noble, just take it down to being very shrewd in your approach. Which brings us to Aquarius. Now this is a new moon of success, especially with Mars being right at the top of your scope along with the new moon. And it can mean that you're going to be very, very busy with your work right through to Christmas time. I just feel that what Uranus is saying is that this can cause stress if you're just doing a lot of work, you're not having a lot of downtime, your home life feels chaotic, You either haven't got enough space, or you spend too much time on your own. It just depends on your unique circumstances. But the link between Jupiter in your sign, Venus and Juno, and Mercury in your sister air sign of Libra is absolutely fabulous. So, you know, something very positive is developing, not just in terms of your goals and ambitions, but also your connection to others. I think it's not quite out of the woods yet for Aquarius people, and it's not really going to be so until Pluto gets into Aquarius in 23 temporarily, back full time for the following long period of time. I think it's going to be about, I need to check, but it's going to be many years. And the age of Aquarius officially, as far as I see it, there are other brands of astrologer who may give you a different opinion. But I think having Pluto still just tucked in that 12th house, it is squaring up with Mercury. So something that's a bit touchier around a kind of contract which is not kind of worked out very well. Something could be dragging its feet. There could be a bit of politics around. But generally speaking, if you've worked hard, success, acclaim and recognition are coming your way. Which brings us to Pisces. Now, of course, your ruling planet is Jupiter, along with Neptune. Neptune's in your sign. Jupiter's coming back the last 3 days of this year. So just bear that in mind. And it's going to be with you again, not all of next year, because of course there is the transit into Aries, but then back into your sign. So it's been an uneven elliptic from Jupiter the last year or two. But having Jupiter, your ruler, in such a beautiful link with Venus is really lovely. And again, it could be because someone's going to recognize what you've been doing. You can be so self-sacrificing, and that could trigger a greater recognition of that. But also, the way that you are self-sacrificing, which I think is one of your greatest gifts, it does need to be measured against protecting yourself. Because if you give so much to others that, you know, you forget what it was like to get away from that commitment, that obligation, that caringness. And this new moon is saying, give yourself permission to get away. It doesn't mean it can't be for a couple of hours, whether it can be for a day trip, a couple of nights, or something longer and perhaps more apparently exciting. You know, if you are, due to the easing of COVID restrictions, able to get away for some winter sunshine, for example, for a longer time, that will be very good for your soul. So I feel this particular event is really saying to you, change is as good as a rest. And as much as that sacrifice inside of your nature is amazing, I think it's got to the point now where you need a break. So try to use the energy of Mars in the run up to Christmas, up until 2 weeks from the end of the year, to do something completely different. So this new moon is pushing you to take control of your time and space and stimulate yourself with some new adventures, variety, spontaneity. All those adjectives are really important to you over the next month or so. It's been a real pleasure being with you. Thank you so much for joining me. Please stay safe. Good luck with this Scorpio new moon, and goodbye for now.